But with avocado, you can get pleasing results without using a fixative process. And it's free essentially if you're already consuming avocados. There's also ways to get avocado pits and not even necessarily eat avocados. You can go to restaurants and ask if they're interested in saving some of their food waste for you.
Welcome to the Wild Herbs Podcast, where we unpack and uncover the healing properties of wild herbs so you can heal naturally with the plants beneath your feet. I am your host, April Punsalan, wild untamed plant lady, also a botanist, an ethnobotanist, and herbalist dedicated to teaching you how to heal with plants. If you want to learn edible and medicinal plants, you are in the right place, my friend. I'm super excited because today you get to hear from Liz Spencer. She is the founder of the Dogwood Dyer, and she's an artist, a natural dyer, gardener, educator, and mother. She was a venture fellow at the Brooklyn Fashion and Design Accelerator program, BF and DA, and holds an MA from the London College of Fashion, where her studies focused on sustainable fashion and encouraging biodiversity and the animal fiber knit. And she's taught fashion and sustainability, and she teaches natural dyeing classes online. And I've taken her classes, they're awesome. And so if you're on Instagram, you've probably seen Liz Spencer because her work is beautiful. And if you haven't, definitely check out Dogwood Dyer. But I'm very grateful and honored that you're on the Wild Herb podcast. And thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I equally admire your work and all the knowledge that you share. And I've also taken your course. So yeah, it's a great joy and an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. So your name, the Dogwood Dyer, I love it. And I was wondering if you could share with us how you came up with that name.
Yeah, it's actually the Dogwood Dyer. It's funny because I think many people, when they see my work and they understand that what I do is dyeing, working with plants to create dye, might assume that the dogwood is a dye plant or that it's established that maybe has a history, and it doesn't. As far as I know, perhaps someone sometime has used dogwood as a dye, and really any plant can be used as a dye. I like to say that because there's dye to be had from any plant, but dogwood dyer is it's not because there is any dye that I've experienced, at least, and I've never actually used dogwood to dye. It's more so like a personal connection to that plant. And
Mm.
I grew up in the Carolinas, and I have family connections there, and I go back there somewhat often throughout my life. And it's just I love that tree. It is for me the big it when I was a kid, at least my memories, it evokes the beginning of spring with the blooming of the dogwoods. And I think it is the state tree of North Carolina where I was born. And I just love it. And I think it sounds nice. And I didn't want to really, for my business, I wanted to name myself something beyond my own personal name. So yeah, it's just, I love that plant. And maybe one day I will die with it.
Yeah, or try and do it would be interesting to try and do the eco printing with the dogwood flower or do dye around it somehow. But yeah, I loved your name. I love your name. When I first found you on Instagram several years ago, I was like, that is a cool name. The Dogwood Dyer. It just rolls off the tongue really easy, the double D's.
Yes, definitely. And I was
Yeah.
thinking maybe I should use the Latin name, but I think one day I will. I need to go search for a dogwood here. I live in Southern California. There are not that many dogwoods here. You'll find them in the mountains, but I gotta try dyeing with it.
Yeah, or maybe the red osier dogwood, the cornice. I forget the specific epithet for that one, but that one has the red stems. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. And it has
Um,
the different shaped bracts. The petals are have that point at the end as opposed to the inward shape. Yes. Yeah. I think I should seek out both or at least one.
so now you live in California, Oceanside, California. And when I was taking your online classes, I got to see your shed and your work area, which is all outside, which I love. And can you tell us about setting up that outdoor space at your house and
Yeah.
working from home?
Yeah, I am very grateful and fortunate to be able to work outside pretty much year round. It's a nice thing about the climate that I'm in Southern California. And I have a somewhat limited garden. I have raised beds, and my dream is to have a bigger garden. I make do with what I have, and we've completely transformed our front yard to be a combination of natives and dye plants. And so every little square inch of ground that I can grow in, I am currently growing in. We have a slope behind our backyard too that I plant that we just laid a bunch of irrigation for, and then hopefully we're going to be able to plant out this season. But my shed and my workspace in my backyard is it's constantly changing. I'm adapting it to work for what I need. I don't do a lot of um, bulk dyeing like I have done in the past when I've done production or collaborations with brands where I'm dyeing lots of garments and lots of yardage. And so I do still have some big pots from those days, and they definitely come in handy when I do need to dye larger things. And yeah, the space is, I think I just want to always add more green to it. That might be one of my most common questions that people ask is, where'd you get that burner, or where'd you get that pot? And that is that can be it's an investment if you're looking for a large pot. But I like to look at Craigslist or free groups, Facebook Marketplace, or even to look specifically amongst people that used to be home brewers for beer,
Mm-hmm.
for upgrading to different pots, and or even restaurants that maybe are closing. That's where I got my sink from, a restaurant that was closing. And so always keep your eyes peeled, and thrift shops too, like secondhand places. But it's definitely, I've accumulated all of my things over the years by just looking around.
I think that's what makes it unique because you can tell it's very organic. It
Yeah.
matches your personality, it matches your business, your outdoor space, your workshop. I
Yeah.
love it. I was
Yeah.
very, I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to go in it and play with you because it was just perfect. And then, of course, I love how it's outside. You went and got your master's of art and you focused on sustainable fashion. Did you know that you were going to go into to sustainable fashion before you even went and got your master's of art?
Yeah. I specifically chose my program at the London College of Fashion. At the time, it was called Fashion and the Environment, the program. Uh,
Mm.
and now I think it's changed to Fashion Futures. I'm not sure, something like that. But I chose that program specifically for the fact that they focused on sustainability in fashion. I knew that I wanted to go to get my master's degree, and had been creating and making clothing from secondhand textiles that I could find at the thrift store, and teaching myself sewing skills, and secretly loving the fashion industry and hating it at the same time, and not really telling my friends about it because I knew how dirty it is, and how challenging of and massive of an industry it is, and how polluting and wasteful. And so when I found the program at London College of Fashion, I was just overjoyed to find that there were other people that were interested in changing the industry and coming at it from all different angles, because it's so complex that there are so many different things that need to be resolved and needed to be mitigated. And so, anyway, I found that program, and I was reading books about sustainability and fashion, and noticed that all the authors were teaching at this one school. Not all the authors, but many of the authors that had been researching and pioneering in sustainability and fashion were there. And that's why I chose that school. And
Mm.
I didn't actually had no experience in natural dyeing when I went there. I had some hobby farming experience where I had kept fiber animals and was teaching myself how to spin and knit, and was really interested in that whole process of creating fiber from fiber animals. And I did focus on that for my thesis. And my premise of my thesis was encouraging the fashion industry to look to biodiversity when sourcing their animal fiber. So instead of just always sourcing merino from Australia, but looking to other animals like muskox in Canada, and alpaca in Peru, and Angora, and all these incredible heritage sheep breeds in the UK. So I sourced all this incredible fiber and created a knitwear collection. But all the while, I had an opportunity presented from a local community garden who approached the college and said, "Oh, you have this green space that you're not using. And would you like to perhaps collaborate with us? Maybe some students want to create a dye garden." And when that was presented to our course, that really just lit a light bulb in my head about ticked all the boxes of what I was seeking elsewhere. I wanted to be able to connect with people in the local community, not just people in my course, but people who were Londoners who were there, and I wanted to meet people in the community. And I had never actually gardened myself. I'd done a little bit of gardening with my grandmother, but never to myself tended plants. And then it was a perfect amount of time. I was there for 15 months to create the funding proposal, get the community volunteer days organized, build the beds, start the seeds, grow the plants, collect the dye stuffs, dye some silk.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a really incredible experience and I was hooked. Just loved it. And being able to be outdoors, away from my computer, away from my knitting machine,
Hmm.
yeah, and with people and just the magic of creating color from plants is just completely captivated me and I'm still captivated and here I am 12 years later. And so that's how I got started in natural dyes and London was really the beginning of my journey.
Your journey. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And so now I'm intrigued of where were you in your program? Were you at the end of your program when this opportunity came across your plate or across your path?
Yeah, it was pretty nice because it was right in the beginning.
Oh, nice.
It was in the fall of 2011, and then I left in the midwinter of 2012. And I passed the program, the garden, and everything that I knew onto the next student who was interested, and she continued to dye garden. And there's a different dye garden that was, I think, that location. It was the London College of Fashion is spread out across London, but that location in Hackney is no longer owned by the college, and so there is a dye garden at a separate location started by another student, and so the legacy lives on.
Nice. So did you finish your your master's thesis on the husbandry side, like the animal side, but then you had this project too?
Yeah, yeah, it was I didn't actually use any natural dyes at all in my in my work in my knitwear. I focused on the natural colors of the fiber. Alpaca has 22 plus different natural colors, everything from white to cream to gray to black to brown to red brown and then all the other animal fibers that I used, I really just focused on their natural colors. And so yeah, funnily enough, I didn't use any natural dyeing in my thesis, but I continued to do it as a hobby and had a love and continued dye gardening when I moved back to the US. I moved to New York after that and just started gardening in tree pits that were in my block in Brooklyn. Took the space and created little dye gardens all around the block because I didn't actually have a community garden that had space. All the community gardens had wait lists in my neighborhood. And that's how I continued gardening in a urban context. And then we moved to California 4 years later. And since then I've had space enough to grow, at least for me, my own enough plants for me to use for dye.
That's awesome. So if you could only grow one dye plant, which one would it be?
Oh, so tough. I think indigo is pretty captivating.
Indigo.
It's a plant that is pretty incredible too. It's very different from all of the other dye plants because of the process required to get the dye from the leaves, and also in the way that it is used as a dye, the way that it chemically and mechanically affixes to the fiber is very different than with all the other natural dyes. But because it creates a blue, it is, I think, maybe the world's favorite color. I used to do this thing when I would teach in person dye workshops. I would always ask everybody to introduce themselves and say their favorite color and corny, but blue was, I think, overwhelmingly the most stated favorite color. So indigo, if I had to pick one, I would say indigo, most definitely.
And that's not Indigo Farah though. That's the other one, right? The one that starts with a P, Pescara or Indigo Farah?
Exactly. I grow Persicaria tinctoria, also
Pescaria.
Japanese indigo or dyer's indigo. And I grow that primarily because of a few reasons. Because of where I live, and most people in North America can grow this plant because it's very easy to grow. It's temperate loving. Whereas indigo fera, which many people, when if they know anything about indigo, they're probably thinking about that plant
Yeah.
because it is the plant that is responsible for most of the natural indigo pigment worldwide that is grown primarily in India. And it's a tropical plant. It's also, there are native species that are native to the Americas, to Central America, Mexico, and even in the Southeast where you are. And I've tried growing tropical indigo and I have grown it successfully, but it's just really challenging for me because I don't have the heat in the summer and the humidity that it really loves and needs to thrive. That's why I grow primarily Japanese indigo. It's very, there's some things about it that make it a little bit of a high maintenance plant. It's certain types of soil it loves and it's a thirsty plant because it's a riparian plant.
Mm.
And so it's good to use drip irrigation if you can, if you're going to grow that plant. And seed availability. It's very easy to find seed, not easy, but it's easier to find Persicaria seed than it is for indigofera seed, at least here in the US.
Yeah, and probably easier to germinate because almost like indigo ferris seems like it wants to be the seed has to be scarified, or you could probably boil it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
one of my colleagues boiled some seeds in that family, in the pea family, and got better germination.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. I found the same thing, yeah, with all the pea family. Like I'm growing butterfly pea for the first time this year, and it's taken a while, but I did all the things. I did the scarification. I made sure I soaked it in some tea to help the tannins soften the seed coat. But exactly, indigo fair is the same way. You definitely need to scarify it and just be patient because it's
yeah.
annual. So it whereas persicaria is an annual, you have to start seed every
Mhm.
persicaria, Japanese indigo. Indigo fair, you can typically get harvests for 3 or 4 years after you wait at least 4 or 5 months for leaves to mature to get enough leaf volume for extracting pigment or creating a dye vat.
So I want to back up a little bit because you were a fellow at Brooklyn Fashion. Then you went to London College for sustainability in fashion. And our culture in the United States, we buy a lot of clothes. Like people, we are always shopping. I don't know if who's the biggest consumer of clothes. Are we one? We're on the top.
Yeah,
Um,
us and
um,
other Western European countries like the UK and France, but yeah, we're probably still at the top.
we're at the top. So, can you tell the listeners about what you learned? Because I'm sure you learned so much about sustainability and fashion and how it causes pollution. Can you talk to us a little bit about the unsustainable practices of the clothing industry to maybe inspire us to, and I can put some links at the bottom, to buy from more sustainable companies or, of course, to buy secondhand clothes? Can you share some of what you've learned and what makes you so passionate about the work you do as well?
Yeah, I think that is probably the largest hurdle for when it comes to sustainability and minimizing negative impact with the fashion industry is just the sheer amount of clothing that we purchase, that
Mhm.
we dispose of. And so it's an industry that relies on creating and selling and I think especially since NAFTA in 1993 when clothing started to be created and sewn and manufactured outside of the US, it's really just become a downward slide into what they call the race to the bottom, where the fashion industry is continually trying to find places where they can make things cheaper and get away with more, where they're disposing of waste that has synthetic pollutants and toxic chemicals without regulation. So it was China for a while, and now it's Southeast Asia. It's moving more to is there's It also has implications in Mexico and Central America, and now it's moving to Africa. And the volume is just because I think many people have become accustomed in our generation, at least, because just as somewhat recently as the early 90s, the average person owned a quarter of the amount of clothing that the average person.
Mm.
And we've just become used to having a wide variety, and with the change of taste is the change of clothes. And also, out of sight, out of mind, once you donate your clothing or dispose of it however you choose, the problem is no longer yours. It's technically out of the Western view. And most of that goes to landfill. It doesn't go to where you think it might. It doesn't go to someone who would might value the clothing, whether it's you just got rid of it because it's no longer your taste, or it has a stain, or it's got a hole, or it's got some wear, or it's just no longer in fashion. But it'll go, perhaps some of it does go to other countries, but a lot of it does go just to landfill. And so, yeah, I think the biggest things that a personal consumer can do include purchasing less, buying less clothes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you can, purchase from secondhand vendors from your local thrift stores. There's so many incredible apps now that allow you to shop secondhand and then choose whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for a certain brand or a certain size, or of course a certain garment or color. So yeah, use the incredible resources that technology provides for the modern day consumer, and get creative. Wear things differently. If you have the resources or the ability, change them if you can. Take them to your local tailor, change the length or There's small things that you can do, make them fit so that you do love your clothing and that you want to wear them for many years, and mend them when they need to be mended. And and then also view your purchases as an investment. So seem it may seem less satisfying to purchase one item of clothing versus four or five if you're purchasing an item that's more expensive because it's made with more consideration. But view it as an investment because it's something that if you take the time to find something that fits you nicely, that you feel good in, that you will want to wear for many years to come, then that alone is one of the biggest things that you can do to limit waste in the fashion industry. And then also do when it comes to pollution and energy consumption around clothing, a lot of people also don't understand that some of the biggest metrics around those two things are actually in the use phase. So the way that we wash
Mm.
and care for our clothing, limiting tumble drying if you can. If you're washing anything that's polyester, it's going to be shedding microplastics. So you can
Ugh.
purchase a filter if you want for your own home washing machine. If you're washing your clothes at home, that can prevent microplastics from shedding into our watersheds and minimize washing. And natural fibers, especially animal fibers, I know they're more expensive, but honestly, they require much less maintenance and care when it comes to washing. Cotton garments, we tend to wash almost after every use, whereas with animal fibers, they're natural antimicrobial and they sometimes just need an airing out. They don't need to be washed. I would say a fraction of the amount. I'm wearing like this cashmere sweater and I probably washed it 3 or 4 times, and I wear it continually throughout the season, and it never smells bad. It always feels good and you can spot clean. So all the things, minimizing the energy consumption in the use phase is something to be aware of as a consumer of clothing, which we all are, and textiles, your bedding too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me, with us, all that knowledge. I have a wool sweater that was gifted to me, and my daughter wears it, and we both wear it. And I haven't washed it. Maybe I washed it one time this winter. And I feel like I don't want to wash it as much because I want the fiber to last longer. But I see what you're saying. Like, it doesn't feel like it needs to be washed in comparison to like a cotton sweater that just starts to feel dingy. And maybe
Yeah.
because the fiber doesn't take on the oil and the grease or, like, different things you're exposed to throughout the day. But
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And cotton has been pushed on us as consumers for half a century. There's a cotton lobby, and cotton has a dirty and horrific history in America, and it still continues. I'm not going to, I wouldn't say don't buy cotton over polyester. I would prioritize natural fibers most definitely, especially if you're going to be naturally dyeing because natural fibers only work with natural dyes. But if you can, do try and invest in a few animal fiber pieces that you can continue to wear and will use much less energy in the use phase.
yes, I love that. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. I'm definitely gonna be like, "Alpaca. What can I buy and wear that's made out of alpaca?" Do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions?
Or even if it's just a small quantity or a mixed fiber, like an alpaca cotton blend, or that actually will bring the price down typically. But yeah, I'm just a big animal fiber advocate.
That's awesome.
It's definitely possible to do it ethically. I think you might have some vegan listeners or people that choose not to use wool or anything that comes from an or anything that is animal derived. But that's also definitely possible to research brands and to trace where the animal fiber is coming from, how the animals are being treated to ensure that the animal fiber is ethical.
Yes, smart.
Yeah.
Now, I had to ask you a quick question. Rayon, because I feel like a lot of the clothes I love are from made in India and they're made out of rayon.
Yeah.
What
Rayon is a semicellulosic fiber that comes originally from wood pulp. Sometimes it's like
mm,
fast growing wood. Bamboo or eucalyptus are two common wood fibers. And then it's put through a chemical extrusion process that's somewhat similar to polyester manufacture, but it extrudes it to create fiber. So it is originally natural, but it does use specific chemicals that are pretty hazardous and really shouldn't be disposed of into waterways. So some of the more ethical there are different types of rayon. Rayon is the umbrella term for the semicellulosic fibers. Tencel tends to be more ethical because of the process. So they use those chemicals in a loop, and they do not dispose of them.
Oh, nice.
It's more expensive, the process, but it's more responsible because the chemicals are not just disposed of, and they're used, and they're carefully disposed of. Or and so yes, it is actually a fiber that you can also naturally dye. Rayon works with natural dyes because it is a natural cellulose fiber. And it's also a fiber that can be a little bit more high maintenance to care for. Just make sure that you read your garment labels when you're caring for your rayon, and to hang dry. I think a tumble dry is not recommended for rayon. But yeah,
Okay.
I would recommend seeking out Tencel if you can, if you like that fiber.
Thank you. I'm definitely going to Google that. So, we were talking about the unsustainable practices of the fashion industry, and we are a huge consumer in the US of clothing and also food. And most people throw their food waste or throw their food away, and it becomes a waste. And you have done this amazing job on really inspiring people. I know you inspired me to use food waste to dye. And one color that I love that I've seen you make is with the avocado peel.
Yeah.
So, could you share with us a little bit about using food waste and with the emphasis on the avocado, and maybe walk us through the process a little bit of how one would dye with avocado and the color that it produces? And what
Yeah.
fabric you recommend?
Yeah, definitely. And avocado is a wonderful dye stuff because it will work with you'll get a range of shades of color, from really light blush pinks to orangey peach colors to, depending upon the concentration of the dye that you make, more russety brick toned colors. And then if you use a different modifier in the process, that's like a natural metal called iron, you can get purple tones. It's just like many dye stuffs, depending upon the process and the water type that you use and the mordant that you use, the natural fixative, you can change the color just from one dye bath and the way that you treated the fibers that are going into the dye. And I love avocado. It is avocado pits and the skins, both parts of the avocado that we waste, that just go into the compost, or that we dispose of and we don't generally eat, can create these colors. And I love avocado. It actually was the first dye stuff that I ever experimented with, because I created this dye garden in London, and I didn't have anything to dye with for a whole period while I was waiting for plants to grow, from in the spring and the winter. And so I experimented with some lunch compost waste and avocado. And it is just a fantastic gateway for anyone interested in doing any natural dyeing, because you also can get away with not using a mordant or a natural fixative with avocado, because it has lots of tannins naturally,
Mm,
and the tannins will act as somewhat as a fixative for the dye stuff. So you can use, and especially on cotton fibers, cellulose fibers, plants, or fibers that are made from plants as opposed to animal, can sometimes have a harder time getting a deep saturated color. You have to do a different process of mordanting. But with avocado, you can get pleasing results without using a fixative process. Uh,
that's awesome.
yeah. Yeah. And it's free essentially. If you're already consuming avocados, there's also ways to get avocado pits and not even necessarily eat avocados. You can go to restaurants and ask if they're interested in saving some of their food waste for you. I have a student, when I taught at Parsons in New York when I lived in New York, and an incredible student who created a dye garden for her thesis, for her fashion thesis, and then could use those dyes, and then ended up actually starting a natural dye company. It's called Green Matters Natural Dye Co. And she's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and they have collaborated with Chipotle, believe it or
Oh,
not,
cool.
to collect all of the avocado pits and skins. You can imagine they make like buckets of guacamole daily. And so she'll collect the waste from them, and she's upscaled it and managed to dye hundreds of pounds of clothing at a time,
Wow.
colors of pinks, and with that iron modification you can get purpley, steely gray colors. And so she's really created a proof of concept that the fashion and the food agricultural industries can collaborate and make use of waste for a beautiful effect. So yeah, it's definitely possible to work with avocado. It's without lots of knowledge of natural dyes. It's a great gateway dye stuff for anybody who's interested in trying natural dyes.
That's awesome. I did tell my friend, Crystal, works at a really high scale restaurant. And I was like, Crystal, let's dye with avocado. My other friend Liz, and she's okay. And I was like, she had saved all the pits, and I felt bad. I feel bad for this. And I was like, oh, it's actually the skins. We need the skins. And I was wrong because you can do the pits too. And then I was like, I'm so sorry. You can do the pits as well. So now we have to like try and get the momentum going again and just have a day over here where we're dyeing with avocado.
Yeah.
One time I went to the thrift store. This was after I took all your classes. I was so motivated and I had gotten all the mordants. I had figured it all out. Not all out. No, I had not figured it all out. I had just, but I had some mordants. I had an idea what I was going to do. And I go to the thrift store and I could not find any white. And there's this lady at the front with all the white clothes in the whole thrift store. I was like, what are the chances? I literally only had one piece of clothing that was white, that was cotton that I could dye with. I think she was dying. She was dying doing something, and I just thought, "Oh my gosh." But anyway, I still have some pieces of clothing that I did do a mordant on, and I can feel like a more alkaline one. So I need to use those pieces of clothing. Can you tell the listeners what a mordant is?
Yeah, definitely. And another fantastic thing on the note of mordants about avocado dye is that an alternative mordanting process, as opposed to using metal salt mordants, I think a lot of people feel a little intimidated when they get into natural dyeing because they learn about the mordant process and that it's essential in getting color to stick to the fiber without it washing or fading, washing away or fading off. Is that then they learn about, okay, now I have to get these mysterious white powders. Alum is the most common mordant that natural dyers have used since antiquity because it's very effective. It's made from aluminum and it's the most one of the most abundant metals on earth. Very accessible, inexpensive, and non-toxic if used responsibly. You wouldn't ingest mass quantities of aluminum, or you want to protect your skin when you're putting your hands in an alum bath, and you want to wear a dust mask when you're measuring out powders and all that, as you would with anything. But it is, I think a lot of people learn about that and then they feel, oh, this doesn't feel natural like I thought it might because I have to use this white powder that I don't even know how it was processed or where it came from. But that's a whole nother subject. But I will say avocado and many other dye stuffs, but avocado in particular is fantastic because you can use an alternative process with soy milk. Um,
Nice.
yeah, or any other protein rich substance. The proteins will really help bind the tannins, the condensed tannins that make those really lovely pinks from avocado pits and skins. And so if you're after that really good pink color from avocado pits or skins, I recommend not even using alum or the traditional conventional mordants, but trying soy milk. You could drink the soy milk if you want it, and you can make your soy milk. You could use soy milk from the store if you just want to get started and not have to put the process of making soy milk in front of you as well. But making soy milk at home is my favorite method of using protein because you get really concentrated, unadulterated soy that is
Mm.
super protein dense and fresh, and it is the most effective. And I have instructions for all that in all my in any tutorial that includes soy, and in the food waste lesson on my website too, in the lesson section and in my workshops. But it's pretty straightforward and it's fun to do with kids. You don't have to worry about you can use all of your kitchen utensils, your pots, your blender, and without fear of introducing something that you're not familiar with. And so yeah, that's another wonderful thing about avocado is that it's a really friendly dye for soy milk processes. Anything with
That's
tan.
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, essentially the mordant process is important for keeping the color on the cloth, and it's done beforehand. You measure the weight of the fabric or whatever you're going to be dyeing, and then you can calculate how much mordant you're going to need, and you dissolve the mordant and create a bath of that's large enough to introduce the fiber into. You want to clean the fiber beforehand, just give it a hot water wash generally for cellulose fibers in particular, like cotton and hemp. And then you let the material sit in the mordant bath for a period of time and then remove it and rinse it, and then it's mordanted and ready for dye.
Yes, it's good. And you do a great job teaching that in your courses. So thank you. I'm going to try. I'm very inspired again, and I'm going to try the avocado. I do have a small bag, and I read that you have to have the weight of the avocado has to match the weight of your clothes.
Yeah, don't feel also intimidated by the quantities and the recommendations because, as with so many things in natural dyeing, there are so many variables. And honestly, it could depend on your water type, it could depend on the fiber type that you're working with. I try to recommend, you could get away with even less that. You could try half the weight of avocado pits or avocado skins to the material that you're going to be dyeing. And you, yeah, don't feel that you have to have, yeah, don't feel prescribed to anyone's recommendation for the amount
Okay.
to keep you from getting started. You can also
Okay.
you can freeze your avocado pits to keep them as fresh as possible so that you can just accumulate them over a period, and then you can leave them dry too. But I like to freeze them. That keeps them pretty fresh so that they don't oxidize prematurely.
Nice. And do the pits dye better than the skins, or are they both they're both
They
the same?
they both make really fantastic colors. There's a slightly different tannin compound that occurs in the skin, so a little bit, and then a little bit more concentration of tannins in the skin, so they can create a more intense concentrated color that tends to be more brown in tone. Yeah, it's also dependent upon how the dye is processed, how long it's boiled, or if it's boiled at all, or how long it's processed, how long it has time to oxidize before you get to dyeing. And those are like the tips and tricks that I include in my food waste lesson and in the another lesson called soy milk painting on my website, that the water quality, like if your tap water, for instance, tends to be soft, you might have a hard time getting those pink colors. So you can always just add a little bit of calcium and acid or to your water to make it hard. Those are the sort of the things that will change the process ever so slightly to get, depending upon what you're after.
Thank you. I'm definitely going to try it. I'm going to aim to try the avocado dyeing by next week because I love the color. I don't know if I'll get the nice creamy peach color that you get, but I'm going to try because I love the color that I see you getting on Instagram.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
so, oh, go
Just
ahead.
keep it, yeah, my biggest recommendation is just if you don't have hard water, make it hard with a little bit of calcium and then give it time. Extract the dye. You'll get the first round of dye and then let it sit for a day and then heat it up again. And then you can
Mm.
add fresh water and do another extraction. And typically, I would say 3 to 4 days after starting the creation of the dye process, you'll see a significant change in the color of the dye bath. It really deepens and darkens with oxidation and time. It's basically just waiting for the condensed tannins to change in color. And then that will ensure that you get the tannins to have been oxidated before you put your fiber in, and you'll get a deeper, darker color.
So I could keep going for a couple of days and play around, maybe with a couple pieces of clothing, or would you wait for the 3 days and then do it? Or
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah, do that extraction first. I know it's really hard because you just want to put your material in immediately when you're creating the dye. But if you wait a few days before you even introduce the fiber for the dye bath to oxidize, then I think you'll be happier with the results. You'll have an easier time getting deeper, darker colors and pinker colors too. And try the soy milk too. I swear by the soy milk.
yeah, I'm gonna try it. I'm excited. I still have some articles of clothing that I got last year that I could use. Yeah. And I think I went to the Dharma trading post too, and bought some silk scarves. Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, silk is wonderful too because it's already a protein fiber, so it will soak up the dye.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope you listening, I hope you give it a try. And definitely, if you do give it a try, tag the Dogwood Dyer on Instagram and maybe even me too, Wild Herb Academy. So thank you so much for your time. Can you tell the listeners what is the best way to contact you or to see your offerings, your course offerings?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. Typically, when I'm creating new content or creating a new tutorial, I'll share it there. I have a monthly subscription where each month you get a new tutorial from A to Z. You get the whole process. You get a materials list, you get places to purchase materials, the pre-mordanting and the prefixative process, how to extract the dye, or depending upon what the technique is, how to dye the clothing, and then how to treat the clothing afterwards. And that's it's called A Year in Natural Dyes, and it's completely flexible. You can join, pause, cancel whenever you like. But it's a fun way for beginners, even and experts, to experiment with natural dyes. And in November of oh no, sorry, October of 2024 of this year, I am focusing on food waste dyes.
Nice.
I'll be diving deep into avocado as well as all the other great food stuff dyes like onion skins, and so that's one way. And then I also have lots of tutorials and lessons, plant lessons, how to grow different plants in my shop on my website, and then video workshops. If you really like video learning, then I have video workshops where you get 3+ hours of video demonstration of me doing all of the processes in my studio, as well as handouts and written information too.
Yeah, I love the eco printing one. That one was one of my favorites, the eco printing and the indigo.
Yeah, I'm working on a new eco printing workshop this summer, hopefully to be released in the fall. I'll be filming this summer. That is just it's gonna be um, 10 times better than my previous one. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to be adding lots of different information like how to press flowers for eco printing in the winter, troubleshooting, printing with local plants, not just plants that you grow. Yeah, it's going to be new and improved eco printing class.
Oh, I'll have to take it because I want to eco print. I just haven't yet. I
Yeah,
did the hammer and everything, and it was fun, but my work does not come out as pretty. I know the comparison is not good, but I'm like, I haven't gotten there. I'm very much a novice, but I would love to make something like a pretty tablecloth eventually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can start with a silk scarf and make something. Yeah, that's a good way to start, I think, a silk scarf.
Yeah, I need to do that. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I had this huge sheet, like this huge sheet, and we were outside on my front porch with like hammers and rocks, and I invited all these people. And then at the end, it was not quite like, definitely was not like Instagram worthy. I could have been like, Liz, I need help. But it was fun. It was fun. And then I just decided I would make the sheet like what we put over the table when we do artwork.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the best attitude to have, is to go at it with not treating things preciously. That's
Yeah.
another good thing about going to the thrift store and just getting fibers that are inexpensive, because then that way if you walk into it with an understanding that it's going to be fun, you're going to learn something. It might not be perfect, then you will just want to do it again, and you want to continue to experiment and just be with plants and get that natural dye high. I call it the natural dye high, where you finish a project and you feel completely satisfied that you created that color in cooperation with the plant.
Yes, definitely. It is a natural dye high. I would say the one that I did do for my husband, the goldenrod, that one came out.
Oh,
That was
good.
a success, yes, and then I added a little iron to the dye bath, and then I did a skirt, and it turned out a little too dark, but you know what, like you said, learning, but the shirt that I did, what I got the dye high, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be out on my front porch all the time doing this," and then life came, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm not," but I'm gonna get back out at least once or twice a year would be awesome for me, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
And just
anyway.
yeah, collect some black walnuts for the winter time dyeing when you have a little bit more time and don't feel the pressure. I know summertime's challenging, but yes, yeah, get the dye high. It'll propel you forward for your future projects.
Yes, I felt like a little witch out there stewing the pot on the front porch. Felt really good. But
Yeah.
anyhow, thank you for inspiring me once again and for inspiring the listeners. And I will put links to all of Liz's offerings. So definitely go to the bottom of the show notes and check out Liz at the Dogwood Dyer. She's definitely an amazing artist. And thank you for sharing all your beautiful work with us. And
Thank you,
thank you
Amy.
for your time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. So, thank you. All right, now it's time to save some avocado skins and avocado seeds and give avocado dyeing a try. Definitely check out the Dogwood Dyer on Instagram. Go to the show notes, click some links, check out Liz's offerings. She's an amazing teacher. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting Wild Herb Academy. And just so you know, our in-season membership is going to open up in a few days. So if you would love to learn wild herbs and to dig a little deeper and to make it a lifestyle where you forage daily, I would love to have you as a member. Many blessings. Stay wild until the next Wild Herb podcast. Peace.